Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, as well as northeastern England. So there's snow and ice warnings out through Wednesday night and into Thursday morning. Elsewhere, a dry, clear but very cold night. Another sharp frost out there, rurally down as low as -7 or 8. On Thursday morning, a sharp frost, but plenty of dry and bright weather for the bulk of the UK, though it will remain cloudier for Northern Ireland, Northern Scotland and the northeast of England as well, as we continue to see these snow showers feed in from the north. We've got a bit more of a breeze out there, so it will feel a little bit cooler exposed to the wind, not much above freezing for many areas. And Thursday night, we're going to see those temperatures plummet. Plenty of clear spells out there for many areas. The showers eventually starting to ease for northeastern parts of Scotland. We could see some mist and murk across the southeast, potentially some freezing fog here. And snow will start to push into the Western Isles through the early hours of Friday. It could be one of the coldest nights of the week on Thursday night, rurally getting down as low as -15 degrees. Now, Friday morning, we'll see quite a lot of bright and sunny weather, but this snow across northern Scotland will become more dominant, falling as snow to lower levels at first before it starts to fall as rain, as we start to see some warmer weather as we approach the weekend, though it will turn wetter and windier for Saturday and Sunday.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. After more deaths in the English Channel today, I'm going to ask the question, how many more deaths does it take before we actually take responsibility ourselves for what is going on in the English Channel? We'll talk, debate that, get your views on it too. We'll look at the sheer number of migrant children that have now gone missing from hotels all over the country. We look at an opinion poll that suggests the Tories could be down to 69 seats at the next election. How seriously is Westminster taking this polling? And Anthony Ward-Thomas, entrepreneur, joins me on Talking Pints, somebody who himself almost became ensnared as a people trafficker against his will. But before all of that, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you and good evening to you. Well, within the last hour, a 6-year-old boy has become the 4th child to die after falling into an icy lake in Solihull at the weekend. The little boy had been fighting for his life in hospital since being rescued from Babs Mill Lake. In a statement, West Midlands Police said they cannot comprehend the enormity of the pain the families must feel. They also confirmed that searches of the lake have now been completed. And in other news today on GB News, the man who murdered a law graduate in East London in June has been sentenced to life in prison to serve a minimum term of 38 years. Jordan McSweeney pleaded guilty to the murder of Zara Alina, but refused to leave his cell for sentencing, saying he didn't want to watch video evidence of his actions. McSweeney was caught on CCTV following at least 2 other women before attacking her as she walked home from a night out in Ilford. GB News has been told up to 4 people may still be missing in the English Channel after a small boat capsized there in the icy waters. 4 people died and 43 others were rescued after attempting to cross the channel this morning. The search operation is expected to continue until at least 9 o'clock tonight. The Home Secretary saying the tragedy shows how important it is to introduce new legislation to stop the crossings. Around half of Britain's rail lines have been closed today as RMT members staged their second day of strikes across the country. Thousands of workers at Network Rail and 14 train companies walked out, leaving some parts of the UK with no train services at all. It's all part of a long-running dispute over pay, jobs and conditions, and comes after the RMT rejected a pay offer of a 5% rise this year with another 4% next year. 6 Chinese officials, including the Consul General, have been removed from the UK over an incident involving a Hong Kong pro-democracy protester. Bob Chan was demonstrating near the grounds of the consulate in Manchester when he was attacked in October. The Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, said the government made it clear China must take action against diplomats. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News, where now it's time for Farage.
Just before 3 a.m. this morning, about 8 miles south of Dungeness, something very badly went wrong to a vessel that was crossing the English Channel. It was one of the flimsily built migrant boats. Whether there was a collision of some kind with another vessel, we don't know. That's speculation. What we do know is that somebody on that boat made a phone call to an organisation called Utopia 56, who are the French equivalent of Care for Calais. I'm not going to go into the role these NGOs play in the migrant crossings today. I don't think that would be appropriate, but it is interesting that that was where the first phone call was made. Then at 2:57, the French Coast Guard was alerted that a boat with up to 50 people on it was in serious trouble. The scramble began. Lifeboats from Dover and Dungeness were sent. The helicopter, Air Sea Rescue from Lydd, was sent. Another was sent up from the Solent. Border Force was scrambled. A Royal Naval vessel went to the scene. The French also sent over a helicopter. As it turned out, there were people in the water. We know for certain that 4 have died. Another 4, perhaps even more, are missing as I speak to you now, but of course with absolutely no chance of having survived a long day in the English Channel in the middle of December. I have to say, I'm not the least bit surprised by this. Crossing at night, busy shipping lanes, it's a very dangerous place. The miracle was that a British scalloping boat was very, very close by at 3 o'clock this morning and picked up at least 30 of those on board that ailing vessel. Had that not been the case, well, then I shudder to think what the number really would have been. Whose fault is all of this? Well, it's too easy, isn't it, to blame the French, to blame the traffickers. You can even, if you want, blame the migrants themselves. No, isn't it time that we took responsibility for this? The reason those people died in the English Channel today is because we are allowing them to cross the English Channel, and once they're here, there is virtually zero prospect of them being sent back. And it's all well and good for Rishi Sunak to stand up with his statement yesterday and Suella Braverman today, but we've heard it all before, and none of it has made any difference. My question to you is, how many have to die in the English Channel before we face up to our responsibilities and do something? Let me know your views, please, to farage@gbnews.uk. Now, we were the first media organisation to break the news of this story this morning, hours ahead of many of our rivals. And Mark White, our Home Affairs and Security Editor, has been in Dover all day and has sent this comprehensive report.
Just 13 months after 27 migrants drowned in the English Channel, another tragedy unfolding offshore. The sound of helicopters filling the night sky as Coast Guard and air ambulance assets scrambled to the scene. There were dozens of people in the water after their small migrant boat got into difficulties. Lifeboats, Border Force and Royal Navy vessels, along with their French counterparts, converged on an area about 8 miles off the Kent coast. Back in Dover, ambulances were on standby in the harbour to receive the casualties. As the morning progressed, the worst possible news, with the confirmation of multiple fatalities. Their bodies brought back to shore as the Home Secretary addressed Parliament on another Channel tragedy authorities had long warned about.
These are the days that we dread. Crossing the Channel in unseaworthy vessels is a lethally dangerous endeavour. It is for this reason, above all, that we are working so hard to destroy the business model of the people smugglers, evil, organised criminals who treat human beings as cargo.
Even as the massive air and sea search operation continued, UK and French authorities had to respond to several other small boat sightings, picking up and transferring hundreds of migrants to Dover as the criminal gangs took full advantage of calmer weather conditions in the Channel.
The brutal truth as well is that criminal gangs have made money from those lives that were lost today. They have profited as people have drowned. Day after day, week after week, criminal gangs are putting lives at risk for money.
This latest tragedy came less than a day after the Prime Minister announced a new multi-pronged plan he hoped would help reduce the number of small boat crossings. Although the authorities in France and the UK have long warned about the dangers of trying to negotiate the English Channel in a flimsy small inflatable, there is no end to the number of people who seem to be willing to take that risk. And as far as the criminal gangs are concerned, well, they're not going to stop what is a lucrative multi-million-pound criminal enterprise. Even in these winter months, the Channel migrants will keep coming. Whenever the criminal gangs see a weather window, they'll launch en masse from French beaches. And sadly, individual tragedies will do nothing to deter them. Mark White, GB News, Dover.
Well, that was Mark White, and Mark White is still there in Dover this evening. Mark, thank you for joining us. Looking somewhat cold on the seafront there. Has any more really come to light about what caused this problem in the first place?
No, there's no word at all about what that cause may have been. Certainly looking at some of the footage that's been doing the rounds showing that boat out there, it looked partially inflated, or deflated, I should say. Whether that was an issue, whether it was the wake of one of these big ships. As you know, of course, in this very busy shipping lane, a flimsy boat like that can easily be overwhelmed and potentially capsized by the wake of a boat, especially at night when you don't see these waves coming towards you. We just don't know at this stage. What we can say in terms of the search operation, it is continuing. We're told it will continue until at least 9 p.m. this evening, and they fear that there may be at least another 4 people who are missing out there. Of course, this long after that incident first unfolded, there is no hope of finding them alive after such a long time immersed in very cold water. But still, the Border Force, the lifeboats, other rescuers are out there along with local fishing boats doing their best to try to find those who are still missing.
Yeah, well, I mentioned before your report, it was very fortunate that British scallop boat was as close by as it was at 3 o'clock this morning. Otherwise, this could have been a lot worse. And Mark, apart from that boat that got into distress, there were 4 or 5 other fully loaded boats that came into Dover today. And there's no prospect, is there, that a tragedy like this will stop them coming? I looked at the forecast. Saturday looks calm. They're just going to keep coming, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, there was a pause after the deaths of 27 confirmed. Actually, it was in the 30s, those who had died some 13 months ago in the Channel. Pause for reflection, people thinking, well, maybe this might have some impact on those criminal gangs, on people willing to take that risk, but it didn't make any difference. It's far too lucrative for the criminal gangs, as we know, Nigel, making many millions of pounds on a good week. And as for the people, well, clearly they're determined to get here. They're willing to take that risk with their lives in crossing this very busy shipping lane. And we've seen as well, of course, during the winter months in the last couple of years, that now they're willing to come over in these very unpredictable weather conditions during winter, where you can get a week of bad weather and maybe 1 or 2 days where it's calm enough. And sometimes it is only just calm enough, or not even quite calm enough, but they'll still push the boats out. And the danger, of course, is that the people build up. Our producer's been across on the other side of the Channel just recently, said there was some 6,000 people in makeshift camps around the Dunkirk area alone, not to mention Calais, just waiting for their turn to get across. So the second they get calm weather conditions, these boats surge out en masse across the Channel. There's very little the French can do about it. And once they're in the water, they're en route here. And providing nothing happens in terms of, you know, an unforeseen event, they'll make it to UK waters. They'll get accepted into the asylum system. And as you mentioned in your introduction, they'll be here for many, many months, if not years.
Mark White, good work for us today down there in Dover. Thank you. We'll speak to you again tomorrow. Ivan Sampson, immigration lawyer, friend of the programme. How many have to die before we take responsibility for this?
It's shocking. And what's worse is that it could have been avoided if there were safe legal routes to come here. Now, if you look at the trends, about 70% of those people on the boats were genuine asylum seekers, coming from countries like Syria, Iraq, Eritrea and Iran. And they've gone through a perilous journey to get here. Now, the only way they could get to the UK was through these means, because you have to be in the UK to claim asylum. Those are our rules.
But even the Archbishop of Canterbury, in his speech last Friday, said there is a limit to how many we can take. We have been, in the last year, incredibly generous as a country to people from Hong Kong, from Afghanistan, from Ukraine. We have a chronic social housing shortage, let alone the hopes of anyone getting a GP appointment in this country. You know, it's all well and good saying those that come from war-torn countries are genuine refugees, but I mean, the UNHCR say there are 80 million people in that category. You know, we have to put some caps on this, don't we?
We can, but the problem is this, that if we put caps on it and we have another Ukraine, what do we do? What do we tell the Ukrainians who wanted to come here if we'd reached our limit already? Would we have said to the Ukrainians, I'm sorry,
these are difficult,
you can't come over.
These are difficult issues.
It has to be fluid. Asylum has to be fluid to deal with the current crisis around the world. You can't have quotas.
On the Channel, it's in the interest of all of us for people to stop dying in the English Channel. I think that should be pretty clear to everybody. Jonathan Gullis, Member of Parliament for Stoke-on-Trent, this afternoon put up a private member's bill that said that we should deport people where they are here illegally, clearly. He was referring mostly to the Albanians, but not just to the Albanians. And we should just ignore the ECHR in these circumstances. It was rumoured that Boris Johnson was supportive, although he wasn't when he was PM. Seems to me, and by the way, Jonathan Gullis's attempt was smashed down by Parliament almost immediately. Seems to me, Ivan, that unless we get changes to legislation, whether it's changes to the Modern Slavery Act, whether it's changes to the Human Rights Act, whether it's disregarding or leaving ECHR, that unless we get those things, this isn't going to stop, is it?
No, I agree. But are you aware that we already have laws to certify Albanian asylum claims? Yeah. We could actually turn them around in 14 days.
Yeah. So why don't we do it?
Because we don't have the resources, the training. And you mentioned the national referral mechanism. That's a problem. Because when their asylum claim is certified as clearly unfounded and they can be removed to Albania, the Albanians are claiming trafficked. They're being trafficked.
That's because of a poorly drafted piece of legislation by Theresa May in 2015.
And also because the police are incompetent to properly investigate. There should be one unit to do both things. And you should be able to certify both the asylum claim and the trafficking claim at the same time. Start to finish, an Albanian should spend no more than 14 days in the UK. We've had these powers since 1996. Albania's been on the white list since 2004. The law's there already.
OK, so
Just
the law's
no
there.
Absolutely.
We don't have, between the Home Office, the immigration authorities, we haven't got the resources or the will.
Nigel, I was in court yesterday, an illegal person here, representing, he's married a British national. Guess, do you think the Home Office even turned up to court? No. They didn't respond to any of our queries, any of our correspondence, and nobody turned up to court yesterday. The judge was wondering, where are you? And that's the situation we're in at the moment.
Not fit for purpose. Ivan Sampson, immigration lawyer, friend of this programme. And there we are. Ivan says when it comes to the Albanians, we have all the laws, all the powers we need. We're just not using them. Dear, oh dear. I think we need a break.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instinct was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I asked you the question, how many deaths does it take in the English Channel before we actually act? One viewer says, none. We need just to set up safe routes. Much the point Ivan Sampson was making, really. Kev says they're more concerned with making it safer for them to get here than actually stopping them coming. Another said if it's like America, they don't really care. Children are found abandoned in the desert, but Biden doesn't care. It is remarkable that Biden was just last week in Arizona but refused to visit the border. And I'll take one more. Judy says, you would think they'd have acted after the last tragedy in the Channel, and yet here we are. And you know what, folks? About 5,000 people have drowned in the Mediterranean since 2015, but the EU have done nothing, have changed no rules at all, and still they come every year in their hundreds and thousands. I mentioned last night to you that 70 children, supposedly aged between 4 and 17, who were in hotels in the Hove area of Sussex, had gone missing over the course of the last 18 months. Add to that the 39 children who've gone missing under the care of the Kent authorities, and they roughly represent 20% of the children taken into care. The total number across the country for the last year or so, I'm going to guesstimate 250, something like that. What the hell is actually going on? Well, I couldn't think of anybody better to join me on this subject than former Detective Constable with Greater Manchester Police, the woman that exposed the horrific Rochdale child sex ring. Yes, we're joined by Maggie Oliver. Maggie, these numbers on the face of it are shocking. Virtually no media organisation wishes to debate it, it seems. What do you make of these numbers and what's going on?
Good evening, Nigel. I think the first thing I'd say is it raises perhaps more questions than it answers, because the first thing I would say is if we have got children as young as 4 being put into hotels on their own without parents, why on earth are they being put there? Now, I am a little bit suspicious whether that is the truth. I've learnt over the past couple of years to be very suspicious of what the media very often reports, but 4-year-olds should not be going into a hotel unaccompanied. They should be going into foster placements, into places of safety. But the other thing that comes to mind for me, Nigel, is that, I know from my time in the police, but perhaps it's even more prevalent now, that many of the young men in particular who come on the boats, for instance, they will come without a passport. They will say they are children. Very often they are not. So when we report children going missing, it's a very emotive sentence, but I would question how many of these going missing are actually children going missing, and how many are disappearing into the ether. And for me, it just shows once again how incompetent the system is, how neglect runs through it, how the so-called professionals are unprepared. These places will attract paedophiles as well. There are no CRB checks. They are not being effectively checked out. So the questions come again and again, and we get, a soundbite today because it's reactive to what has happened this week. This isn't just happening this week. It is not going to get better unless the powers that be take control.
I'm sure that's right. I'm also sure that, as you say, a lot of the so-called children actually aren't, and they've been put in these hotels and they've just disappeared and got off to join the gangs or whatever it is. However, Maggie, what we did notice over the course of this summer for the first time were young single females teenagers arriving through the immigration centre at Dover. Is it possible that minors have been removed from these homes and are finished up in the sex trade? Is it possible? And if it is, how on earth would we find out?
I think absolutely it's possible. And it is the authorities are neglecting their lawful duty to protect children. I mean, I don't know the makeup of many of the migrants. I know we're being told they're Albanians, but I look at what's going on in the world. Look at what's going on in Iran. Look at what's going on in Afghanistan with women fighting for their lives, really. So it isn't beyond the realms of imagination that many of these young women are coming from places like that, and they need protection. We have to find a way to differentiate between those who are exploiting the system and those who really need our help. And at the moment, we don't have that differentiation. We just get everybody lumped in together, and nobody seems to be taking control and dealing with the problem that the country faces, because we can't take in economic migrants, really. But when somebody is truly fleeing abuse or human rights contraventions, we do have a moral duty to take care of them, and for children that is even more important. So I think the system needs to really get a grip.
Well, Maggie Oliver, thank you for your contribution to this debate. We're going to keep our eye fiercely on this. And if any of you out there, GB viewers, GB News listeners, have any information about what may be happening to some of these children, please get in touch with us ASAP. In a moment, a shocking piece of polling came out overnight suggesting the Tories could be down to 69 seats after the next election. How seriously is Westminster taking all of this? Back on that in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, some remarkable polling out overnight. Now, do we believe it or don't we? It's suggested, it's Savanta Comres, absolutely legitimate polling company, suggested the Tories could collapse down to 69 seats. And I wonder just how seriously all this stuff is being taken in that building that's just behind us in this studio. The associate editor of The Telegraph, Chris Hope, joins us. Chris, when people see these polls, What do they think? What do they say?
I think that's a massive over-exaggeration. That's Savannah Cromwell's poll. I mean, 69 MPs, no way. More challenging for Labour is how do they win 124 seats to get their one-seat majority in the Commons. And I just sense that I think the movement by Sunak on immigration may not be enough as far as you want to see it, Nigel. I do think that is going towards where the public are. If he can sort out immigration over the next 3 or 4 months, but then taxation towards the election, there's more of a chance for the Tories. I think numbers are coming back towards them.
OK, but if the Conservatives once again promise we'll sort the English Channel out and once again don't, then yet again they've raised expectations.
Yeah. And not the Tories, but I think Sunak personally has done that. He announced that yesterday himself in the House of Commons. His Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, was 2 steps along, wasn't even in the so-called donut around Sunak. She was nowhere near the policy. This is a number 10 policy. It stands or falls on him. Now, he won a lot of credibility through the furlough scheme when he saved millions of jobs probably by spending all the money.
And how much of it went on fraud?
Well, yes, but at the time it did work out, and in the final analysis, some did.
But you're
go
the
wrong
Telegraph.
way.
I mean, you're a Conservative supporting newspaper.
That was the time. But my point to you is, easy. Spending money is easy. Stopping things happening is harder, and immigration will be really hard for him, I think.
But as a national leader, at a time when we're facing a number of crises, strikes, the economy, the migrant situation, deaths in the Channel today, all of these things. Yes, he appears at the dispatch box once a week.
Where else is he?
He's almost invisible.
He's doing 1 tweet a day, which is a bit more than you. No, fewer than you, but one a day. I mean, he's barely there. He's now passed Liz Truss's unwanted record of 49 days as Prime Minister. That was on Monday, and we're looking forward into the new year. We're planning, or we're here. They're going to do some big Sunak announcement of what he stands for, because no one really knows. He's a competent manager. He's good at managing the country, but then so is Keir Starmer, and he's shown competency. The pound's recovered against the dollar. What else is there? How do you feel the pain of an economic
and he's
crisis?
facing Starmer. Let's just see and listen to a quick clip of Keir Starmer at the dispatch box at PMQs today.
Mr. Speaker, nurses going on strike is a badge of shame for this government. Instead of showing leadership, he's playing games with people's health. And there is a human cost.
Well, I don't know, Chris. I'm not a Labour supporter, never have been, but he does look quite chirpy, doesn't he?
Starmer does. I think he is in a box into a corner at the moment. As competency returns to the Tory government, what is Starmer offering? He's offering a lot of the same that Sunak offers. He's a new person, different face, but really it's the same offer. I thought the attacks on non-dom status, removing that charge, saving $3 billion, spending it on nurses, was as a cheap line he's been peddling for months. I think Starmer he needs to find a new narrative to try and hit the government, because
so no fresh ideas, really.
No ideas, really. But I do think Sunak has been hiding. You know, he's in Visi Rishi, whatever you call it. He's not around. Maybe he feels that we've had too much Tories, and we had a lot of Tories on your programme and elsewhere, haven't we, over the past year? Time to retreat. But I do think that and we are in mid-term now. The view is, back to those polls, is the don't knows are mainly Tory don't knows. If they can decide, the Tories are back in business, they might come back towards where the government is.
Well, they might, but some might go to reform.
They might not quite. Reform is there now, Nigel. That's just you're the president. Will you come back?
Well, I'm the honorary president. Yes,
will you come back?
No,
They want you back?
Richard Tyson did a great job.
Did a good job.
I'm having so much fun here at GB
Perhaps
News.
a brief tour of
I'm having
halls.
great fun here at GB News. Is reform being taken as a threat?
It is, yeah. I mean, it's polling at 9 points, 10 points. If those numbers moved across to where the Tories were, then they'd be 10 points behind mid-term. That is achievable to overturn that. So it's a problem. Tyson, your party, is sitting there as a threat. It's trying to pull should be pulling the Tory party rightwards where their votes are.
I think what I take from this conversation about what's really going on inside the corridors of power is that Sunak needs to step up to the plate rather more.
He does. He can't assume that he's going to be fighting the next election. I do think Boris Johnson is there. He's earned his £1 million, we saw today. If he can, I think the next big staging post is the 7,000 seats up for grabs in the May elections, 4,000 the Tories. If they tank there, next July could be a big-time Tory leadership contest.
Oh,
and that blonde bombshell could be back, Nigel Farage.
Oh, no, not another one, as they say. A couple of quick thoughts on other things today. We found out, it's a real what the Farage moment, we found out that there were no arrests of any England or Welsh football fans at the World Cup of Qatar, that it was all very good-natured. And I'm not one who thinks we should restrict people having a drink and having fun, but mark that, the contrast with what happened outside Wembley Stadium on the final of the Euros against Italy last year, and it's quite a contrast. And my final little thought, Ngozi Fulani, you know, I talked about her, because I found out after I'd done my broadcast a couple of weeks ago that actually her real name is Marlene Headley. She's actually born to West Indian parents, but has now chosen to tell us that she's from African heritage, and that's how she dresses. Her charity, Sister Space, is being looked at by the Charities Commission, it would appear, whilst it doesn't pay her a particularly big salary, to have really rather large expenses, and the Greater London Authority are worried. Is the money that they've given to her charity, Sister Space, has it actually been used appropriately? We'll wait and we'll find out what the Charities Commission have to say. But you know what? In this country, in life, if you put your head up over the parapet, if you choose to get involved in a big public row, you better make sure that your cupboard is clean. Now, Sister Space say there is no problem, and that may well be the case. But it's a lesson to any of you out there who think going out there for your 15 minutes of fame will come free. I promise you, from my own experiences, it does not. In a moment, it'll be Talking Pints. I'll be joined by Anthony Ward-Thomas, somebody who worked in the same industry as me, but went on to become an incredibly successful businessman. He also nearly became a people trafficker by accident. All of that in just a couple of moments.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
It's that time of the day. Yes, it really is. It's time for Talking Pints. I'm joined by Anthony Ward-Thomas, entrepreneur. Anthony, welcome to the programme.
Thank you very much.
Now, if we turn the clock back 40 years, we were both working for companies on the London Metal Exchange, and I stayed there for 20 years and then went on and did politics, but somehow commodity broking wasn't quite for you, was it?
No, well, mathematically I struggled, but also my behaviour left a little bit to be desired. I was dismissed for taking my clothes off during the Christmas party, which was a blessing, really, because it opened the door for me to actually explore something completely different. So from...
I mean, in those days, stripping off at a Christmas party, I mean, I wouldn't have thought that was a sacking offence then, was it?
No, but it had something to do with fire extinguisher and also the chairman, Freddie Wolf, as well. So it was deeply frowned upon by the management at the time. But in hindsight, it's probably the best thing I ever did. And
because when people get sacked in life, you know, they're down, depressed, they think the world's all over. And yet, actually, it is true, isn't it, that one door closes?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I wasn't down or depressed. I was just a little surprised that their sense of humour wasn't the same as mine. But actually, you know, it very much forced me to think, what am I going to do that's going to be able to afford to educate my children that I obviously never had then, but to live a life where I'm not relying on a low ceiling.
And to be your own boss, I guess.
And to be my own boss. It's also one of those things that some people are unemployable, and that's not necessarily a failing, but it's a realisation. And when you realise that you're unemployable, you have to then, you know, bite the bullet and do something about it.
I felt that for many years myself. But so, I mean, how do you get into a business like removals? And it's, you know, it's house removals, it's office removals and relocations. Why that business?
It's a simple business. And if I said academically I'm a simply qualified individual, I didn't go to university or anything like that. And I looked at it thinking, well, do you know what? What's a simple business? Funerals. Dig a hole, put someone in it, or burn them, or move a sofa from one house to another. What could be more simple than that? Well, I chose the moving of the sofa from one house, and ultimately it is that simple. But when you get to the size that we are now, you're moving many sofas to many houses, to many vehicles, and it actually, by dint of its size, becomes more complicated.
You go into that business, but there are already loads of firms in that business. What gave you the edge? What was the gap that you saw?
We moved a sofa more nicely than the other competition, notwithstanding we didn't stain it, we didn't break it, we didn't scratch the walls. So we just upped the game a little bit, we just upped the standard a little bit, to the point where now I believe that our standards are now copied and emulated by most of the industry. Because we really did. We very much treated every job and every individual and every piece of furniture as if it was us.
And you've got a variety of companies now under this umbrella.
Yeah. We have, in London, we have Anthony Ward-Thomas, Aussie Man and Van, Gentleman and Van, and Bishopsgate, which is a commercial business.
And revenues of tens of millions a year?
Our sales last year were 47 million. So it's a medium-sized business.
And some famous customers?
Yeah, we got some very famous customers. I can't even remember who they mostly are. Oh, Piers Morgan being one of them.
Oh, well, there you are, the competition. Yeah. And Boris Johnson, one of your firms moved as well.
Boris Johnson, yeah. And the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Right.
Which was a nice move. Some of the Aussies who were on the job didn't really quite get who he was and realised that he'd obviously done well because he had a big house just across the road there.
Well, it's actually literally within 150 yards of where we're sitting, isn't it? Yeah. So presumably, you're high-end, you're giving a good product, that means that you charge a price that is commensurate with that.
Yeah, I think high-end is a slightly, whatever, it's not the word I use because it rather pigeonholes you. I think really our USP is honesty, integrity and trust. And people pay for that. You know, high-end, as I said, slightly pigeonholes people with lots of money. But they've got to be able to trust a bunch of perfect strangers to walk into their house and not nick everything.
Yeah, but things must go wrong sometimes.
Oh, they do. But that's as far as I'm prepared to say.
I mean, the removal van and things going wrong, it's sort of almost the stuff of sort of carry-on films, isn't it, really?
I mean, back in the day when I was on the lorries myself, plenty of things got wrong. I moved... the chap who designed Bedford Theatre, and he had a balsa wood model of Bedford Theatre, which was beautifully made. I ran it over and squashed it. And I was so embarrassed, and I went up to him and I said, look, Roderick, I showed him this.
What was left of it?
He said, I never got the job anyway, so there you go. Sometimes it works out nicely.
And I'm fascinated by the job in Europe and Calais, and I mean, you could have become a people trafficker, couldn't you?
Well, I was we did have a little bit of people trafficking experience about 10 years ago when one of our vehicles came back from France. It came into the yard. There was a noise inside the vehicle, and lo and behold, we opened it up, and there were about 10 or 15...
Oh, as many as that?
10 or 15 lads who actually turned out that they were from Iraq. The police turned up. They put them in handcuffs for only a very short period of time. They then unhandcuffed them, gave them 10 quid and an address in Croydon.
Really?
And off they went. Yeah.
As easy as that?
As easy as that. It was as easy as that. I'm not sure they ever got to Croydon, because if you can imagine North London to Croydon being in Iraqi on a Friday, it's kind of difficult gig, isn't it?
It just shows you the scale of what's going on out there is probably bigger than any of us realise. And yet you could have faced significant fines for that, couldn't you?
Those came in a little bit later, where the drivers were held responsible for their
and they are now, aren't they?
And they are now, and they're slightly more vigilant in checking their loads. But on this particular instance, the lorries came back, the padlocks were all on, the backs of the lorries were all locked up, so we still don't quite know why they came in.
Yeah, no. But the idea that the police turn up and off you go, lads, is
Friday.
Just extraordinary.
French let them in because it was Friday. Police wanted to get off, it was Friday. Croydon was closed because it was Friday.
Goodness gracious me.
Anyway.
Anthony, you're an entrepreneur. You're somebody that wanted to work for yourself. You had ambition. You're not alone. There are many millions of people in this country, about 5.5 million people in this country, who act as sole traders, run their own businesses, are their own bosses, don't get sick pay, don't get the benefits of being employed, but do it because it either, as you said, for you, suits their personality, gives them a bigger ambition. But I'm just looking at the environment for people getting started on their own right now. We've got, in a few weeks' time, we've got corporation tax going up significantly. We've got dividend income tax going up significantly, which is how most directors of small companies pay themselves. No relaxation of IR35. Are we sending all the wrong signals?
It's a difficult one, that, really. I just think it starts earlier than that. I think if entrepreneurs or people who want to start their own business are looking at those prospects, they shouldn't be doing what they're planning to do. They shouldn't be looking at the negative side of what you've just mentioned. They should almost be parking that and wait till that becomes relevant. The trouble with it now is the barriers to entry just to even get on are very high. Because for the sake of argument, if I had to do my own business now that I started in 1985, the cost of vehicles, the cost of licences, the cost of HGV, operating base, professional competence exams, etc., 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 I would never do it if I knew what was involved. I just never would. And I think that puts off a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
Yeah, it is difficult. But tell us, outside of business and being successful, horse riding, I mean, you're quite an accomplished amateur jockey.
I was enormously talented as an amateur jockey. In fact, I'm the only one who thinks that. But I was... I had a short stint as being an amateur jockey, and I finished it off. My last ride, funnily enough, was at Aintree over the Grand National Fences.
Yeah.
I had 2 rides there, and being an enormously talented jockey, I fell off twice. So I never managed to get round, which is a great shame, and sometimes it wakes me up in the morning, even now, knowing that I'll never complete the Aintree course.
But an exciting thing to do.
Unbelievably exciting thing to do, and I'm really privileged to be able to work towards that and say, when we go to Aintree or Cheltenham or any of the places, I've gone round there, and people look at me slightly incredulous.
Or gone round most of it.
Yeah, I got around Cheltenham a few times.
Yeah, OK.
But Aintree is a very different thing.
Yeah, I bet it is.
But it's when you jump those fences, it's the amount of time you spend in the air gives you time to think, Christ, this is going to hurt, which I did a couple of times, but there we go.
Great story. Thank you for joining me on Talking Pints. OK, let's go for Farage, the Farage. The first one is, Michael asks, would a Starmer government signal the re-emergence of Tony Blair? Do you know what? He's re-emerging in politics all over the world. The power this man has. Hundreds of employees. Gross revenues last year, even bigger than Anthony's company, 66 million last year. We're told it's all not-for-profit. Yeah, OK, I'm sure I believe that. Look, Starmer is Blair light. You know, it's not Corbyn, it's miles and miles away from that. Joe asks me, could the EU survive a Le Pen presidency? I sense it may well be coming. I think that the populism we saw in 16 of Brexit and Trump happened in relatively benign economics. I think it could be even bigger in the years to come, and Le Pen may well win. As a businessman, the Brexit referendum, which way did you go?
Well, funny enough, actually, I voted to leave the EU, but not for the common reasons that most people think. I voted to leave so that the whole thing would collapse. The French would then follow, the Italians would follow, the Germans would follow, and then reconvene and do it again properly.
Yeah.
But that never happened.
It never happened. No, never mind.
We were very much left out in the cold. And I thought, you know, there's so much wrong with it, but there could be so much right with it.
Well, the idea of neighbours cooperating together and being friends makes absolute perfect sense. And the more people trade with each other, the less likely they are to want to fight each other. All of that makes sense. Yeah. It was just that it was very political, wasn't it?
It needed to be completely dismantled and everyone start with a clean sheet and start again.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. And finally, Ryan asks, should we be worried about the influence of the World Economic Forum within the UK government? Look, the World Economic Forum has existed for a very, very long time, as have the Bilderberg Group and many of these things. Their annual jamboree will be in Davos from the 15th to the 20th of January. That's where all the big global leaders get together and their friends in the European Union and the UN. And actually, I'm thinking about turning up myself. Yes, I really am thinking about turning up myself. I may not be very popular, but then after my years in the European Parliament, I'm pretty used to not being very popular at places where I turn up. I'll talk more about the WF over the course of the next few weeks. I'm done for today. Back with you at 7 tomorrow. I'm going to hand you over now to Mark Dalen.
Well, Nigel, a really busy show. This migrant crisis, it needs to be sorted within days, not weeks or months. Plus, if Rishi Sunak can get on top of this, does it move the dial for him politically? I'll be taking your emails, but it's all about that migrant crisis. Don't go anywhere, keep it GB News.
Good evening and welcome to the latest weather update with me, Annie Shuttleworth from the Met Office. It's staying very cold over the next few days with further snow showers and some ice out there as well. It's very cold at the moment because we've got this strong feed of Arctic air. You can see these deep blue colours coming down all the way from the north and spreading across the whole of the UK. So very cold air at the moment. And that means we'll continue to see some snow showers pushing in from the north across northern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, as well as northeastern England. So there's snow and ice warnings out through Wednesday night and into Thursday morning. Elsewhere, a dry, clear but very cold night. Another sharp frost out there, rurally down as low as -7 or 8. On Thursday morning, a sharp frost, but plenty of dry and bright weather for the bulk of the UK, though it will remain cloudier for Northern Ireland, Northern Scotland and the northeast of England as well, as we continue to see these snow showers feed in from the north. We've got a bit more of a breeze out there, so it will feel a little bit cooler exposed to the wind, not much above freezing for many areas. And Thursday night, we're going to see those temperatures plummet. Plenty of clear spells out there for many areas. The showers eventually starting to ease for northeastern parts of Scotland. We could see some mist and murk across the southeast, potentially some freezing fog here. and snow will start to push into the Western Isles through the early hours of Friday. It could be one of the coldest nights of the week on Thursday night, rurally getting down as low as -15 degrees. Now, Friday morning, we'll see quite a lot of bright and sunny weather, but this snow across northern Scotland will become more dominant, falling as snow to lower levels at first before it starts to fall as rain as we start to see some warmer weather as we approach the weekend, though it will turn wetter and windier for Saturday and Sunday.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
It's Mark Dolan in for Mark Stein tonight and tomorrow night. A busy show. In my big opinion, the migrant crossings are an economic and national security emergency. And they're now a humanitarian one as well, as several people perish in the Channel overnight. 4 fatalities. Whoever fixes this wins the next general election. I'll get reaction from top political commentator and journalist Patrick O'Flynn. Could action on the migrant crisis move the dial for Rishi Sunak politically? And are shares in Keir Starmer too high at the moment? Or is a Labour government inevitable? Could the migrant crisis be the defining issue? I'll ask top academic Professor Matthew Goodwin, who has crunched the numbers so you don't have to. Meanwhile, a Church of England school has been teaching 8-year-olds about gender ideology and the idea that they may have been born in the wrong body. And they're encouraging 3-year-olds, that's right, 3-year-olds, to declare themselves as non-binary if they're not sure whether they're a boy or a girl. Do you want that for your kids or your grandkids? I'll speak to a concerned father who took his child out of that very school. He tells his shocking story in a couple of minutes. And as Elon Musk reveals the shocking levels of censorship on Twitter before he bought it, could his exposés see America's medical chief Anthony Fauci in jail? Also, have we been selling our DNA to the Chinese? What could possibly go wrong? Alex Marshall from The Spectator has the story. I want to hear from you throughout the programme. GB Views at gbnews.uk. A busy hour to come. My big opinion next on that migrant crisis and my solution. But first, the headlines with Polly Middlehurst.